everyone. Welcome to the podcast. It's called Short Fuse for Fear. And, I guess technically this is a yearly podcast because we've only done it once last year at Halloween. So I don't know if that's going to continue to be a thing. Maybe it's too scary to do more than once a year, or maybe we're just too lazy. It's kind of hard to figure out. But so last year we did a podcast where we just had some people come on and tell some scary stories, and we all kind of reacted to them and stuff like that. But I thought this year we'd do something a little bit different, especially since by a strange series of circumstances, I found out that Steven, my friend Steven, had a story about helping put on a haunted house when he was younger, obviously. But he lived in the Bay Area, which I also lived in the Bay Area, which is for a while, and I was in a haunted house. I worked in a haunted house. So I thought that's an interesting coincidence. So maybe should be our inspiration for doing the podcast this year. So anyway, so I guess we'll just talk to Steven first. Welcome,
Right.
Steven.
Thank you.
Tell us about your Wizard of Oz haunted house that you and your dad did and scared all the little kids.
Of course, yeah, we ruined an entire generation for
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz. This is actually a haunted house that me and my dad and both my brothers worked on together for a local elementary school. And we would actually do it yearly, and this was just happened to be the theme this one particular
Oh, okay.
year was a Wizard of Oz theme. And we decided to turn Wizard of Oz into rated R, scary
Rated R Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz. And
Now, whose idea was it? Was it everyone's
was,
idea, your dad's idea, or what?
it was actually my oldest brother's idea. His name is Nicholas, because he was really into computers and kind of projection equipment stuff at the time. So he wanted to really make something that he could create some projections, like 3D projections coming at people in the haunted
But
house.
was he into the Wizard of Oz? Like,
Oh
whose
yeah,
idea?
we all kind of grew up on Wizard of Oz. It was
Okay.
one of those movies we watched with our dad and with our parents and everything. And we would always do that Science Theater 3000 with like our own movies
Right.
growing up. And Wizard of Oz was one of those on repeat most of the years. So it was definitely a theme that we felt like it was Halloween enough with the
Right.
witches and the flying monkeys. It's
I
got
mean, it
some
is a very scary movie, but I've never heard of
right.
someone, because as a kind of like a Halloween nerd, which I think you are as well, never
Yeah.
heard of anyone doing a Wizard of Oz themed haunted house. Like, there's a bunch of kind of tropes for haunted houses, like vampires and science fiction, weird stuff.
Yep.
But that's what. So the whole family embraced the idea of Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah, 100%. It was, as a film person, it was just such an iconic movie.
Right.
But going to color, everything back in that day, that Wizard of Oz always had a very special place in our
Got
heart.
it.
So we decided to ruin it with a haunted house, or to make it better.
So now, just so we have context, so where did you guys do this? What part of the Bay Area?
This was actually out in Pleasanton, California, in
Okay.
the East Bay, in what they call the Tri-Valley.
Okay, got it.
And we did it at a local elementary school called Wanna Grove. But yeah, we used the entire gymnasium, and we made some false walls, wooden walls and everything, to kind of create a pathway and a walkway. And you would go into different rooms, and there'd be different things happening that would touch on different parts of the Wizard of Oz story. Yeah, so actually you're walking up, and it's actually was a golden road, like following the golden brick road to come up to the haunted house, and that was sort of the path you would follow through it. And in the beginning at the ticket booth, or sort of the entrance, I guess they would call it, you would meet with like the Tin Man and the Scarecrow. And, they would give you all the words of encouragement that Tin Man and Scarecrow would. And so they would go in through the yellow brick road, and they would go into a first room, and they would see Dorothy in a cage. And she's kind of like locked up in a cage.
No.
And she's yelling at like, "Get out of here! Get out of here! It's not safe." And then you see Toto, which was actually a little animated doll, come like run out. And then it would go back behind a false wall. And then a werewolf would come out. And then grab Dorothy and then pull her back behind. And then you would just see like bones and pieces of like clothes flying over into the cage.
That's amazing.
Thus begins the traumatizing of the children.
Right. And then the Wicked Witch of the West would pop out and just be like, and would do her little line of like, Dorothy is no longer a problem, sort of approach with it, which was pretty funny. And then she's the one that scares and like pushes the people out of that room into the next. So the next room was actually one of my favorite and funniest ones was, what are their names? Is kind of on the way to the Emerald City is kind of the approach they have. So they're kind of on the road, and it's that little town.
Munchkin Town?
Yeah, the Munchkin Town. But it's just a massacre. So it's just a bunch of like dead munchkins and everything, and like fake fire, like burning these small little buildings and things of just and the witch is like still like bringing them and following them behind of like the Munchkin Town is never going to be an issue again.
Did you get the grade school kids to play the dead munchkins?
No, we had a lot of them were because it was apparently in bad taste to have little kids play.
It isn't.
So they were all like stuffed.
Oh, okay, dummies and stuff.
Dummies and things like that. But then as you're walking into the next room, fog starts to accumulate. And with this fog and with the projector system, the way it was set up, it starts to look like the flying monkeys are flying at you. And then there were some people dressed up in the monkey outfits that would be on the ground. And as you walked further, there were, I always get the name wrong, there'd be these stalagmites, because you might trip over them, that were probably about waist high or so that we made, that just stood across the ground. And you had to actually, it was like a field of them. And there was all fog throughout. So you had to kind of work your way through it. And there were people dressed up as the monkeys down in the fog that would just like jump up and then draw back down, run off to another spot, jump up, and because you can't touch people in the haunted house. You have to get special waivers for those.
Special touching waivers.
Special touching waivers. As you are going through, these ones are jumping up. You have these fake, like hologrammed ones flying at you from the top and coming down. And then you just start to hear like a noise, and you hear like all the flying monkeys and everything start to scream, and they run off. And so everyone's left in this kind of field of stalagmites, like, what the heck is going on? And then a giant spider, like probably twice the size as me, comes down from the from the ceiling, and like directly at the people, like stops probably like 2 feet in front of them. And it's like the legs are moving and everything. It looks like the spider from like Lord of the Rings. Shelob coming up for you. And all the monkeys are like, we're out of here. And that was probably one of the best scares that got most people, because you don't expect a spider.
No.
With the Wizard of Oz theme.
Right.
But what would flying monkeys be afraid of?
Giant spiders, apparently.
Right? Because they get caught in the web. And then, so get moved from there. And it was kind of like, and when I say moved is you would have a tour guide
Yeah.
that takes the group through. Um, but it was literally a go from room to room. So it wasn't that hard to figure out how to maneuver it,
Yeah.
but just to kind of keep it moving because we would have a couple hundred people come through a night
Whoa. That's
on
a
it.
lot.
Because it was just for the community and we would only do it for one night.
Oh, it was one night only.
Yeah, it was a one night for the
Oh, okay.
elementary school as a fundraiser for their like fall fundraiser.
Got it.
So we went through the stalagmites and the spider, and then you moved into the Emerald City and into the hall. And you would expect to see a giant face of who?
The wizard himself.
Correct. But that's not who you saw. You saw the Wicked Witch of the West. And when there was a curtain that would get pulled back, it would just be a skeleton sitting there of the wizard.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
the witch has officially taken over Oz. And that it is now her domain. And water is outlawed. That,
Of
so
course.
she will never get melted. And it was kind of this, you are now in her domain and there is no reprise. There is no safety.
There's no escape.
There's no escape. And then the next thing you see is the Cowardly Lion that comes in and is like the lead of like a resistance movement. Like, come with us. We will save and get you out of here. And now it was more of just like an escape, which actually was kind of cool because from the back room, the last room, sorry, it was in the back of the gymnasium. So you had to go down this really thin hallway to get out. So we made it like an escape route
Yeah.
from the Emerald City to get out. But yeah, it was really cool to see this like whole mix between like what would Wizard of Oz look like if the Wicked Witch of the West just ran it all.
Right.
There was just this demonic, dark place. There was no innocence left. But the Cowardly Lion still found his courage in that resistance to the witch. So yeah, then from there you moved out, and then
you're free.
That you were finally free.
Did you get backlash from the PTA that particular haunted house?
Yeah, we did. It was a little, especially like the massacred munchkins, and we got some feedback that it was not in good taste for the community.
Was there anyone in particular that was like gave you a piece of their mind?
Oh yeah.
One that remember
Yeah.
a particularly vicious review or
Yeah, it was not to me particularly. It was actually to my brother, who was kind of the spearhead of this one, of the vision of it. Because he had just turned 18, so he was actually like an adult on this one, and part of the PTA. He was asked to not be in charge of the vision of a haunted house moving forward, which was fine, for him. He did his one and done. And then just helped out for years after that and before that, because I'd been doing this since I actually went to elementary school there.
So he was allowed to do tech stuff, but he was never allowed to express his personal vision of a haunted house. There's a lot of little kids in therapy being like, why do I have this memory of a giant spider and dead munchkins? I don't know where it comes from.
Right.
Well, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, that's
Steven.
a great
Thank
story.
You.
Yeah,
that's a really good one.
Thank you, Steven,
of course,
for your contribution to the podcast.
Of course. Thank you for willing to let me share it with everybody.
Sure. So I didn't create a haunted house, but I was in a haunted house in not the East Bay, I guess you call it the South Bay in the Silicon Valley. But anyway, so I always wanted to, as a little kid, I always wanted to go see a haunted house, but because I lived in a tiny little town, we never had access to it. But my brothers one year put on a haunted house in my parents' basement. I don't even think it was for Halloween. I think it was like summer. And one of my brothers was really obsessed with wax museums and how creepy they are. So in my parents' basement, we had this little haunted house where we were all supposed to be wax figures from reenacting scenes from scary movies or whatever. And we only had two customers, the kids that live across the street from us, Alex and Steve. They came through. But the part about it that was supposed to be scary is you go through my parents' basement hallway, you see the fake wax exhibits, which is just us, my brothers and I, dressed up or whatever. But at the very end, the wax figures come to life and they like attack the customers. But we scared these two little kids so bad that my parents immediately shut it down. They're like, no more haunted wax museum in the basement. You can forget about it. So I've always like, oh, I want to be, I guess that's probably why the inspiration for me having this weird idea of like, I really want to work in a haunted house. So I finally got a chance, sorry, to work in a haunted house in, I guess it was San Jose. That's why Sunnyvale, but basically the Silicon Valley. Anyways, it's called Gyro's 3D House of Terror. Now, I never knew what gyros meant. I actually looked it up before we did this. It stands for Global Youth Resource Organization. So I don't know if it was some kind of nonprofit. I think it was for profit. So I was like, I got to work for here. So I was in Sunnyvale and actually auditioned. There was an audition process that involved me screaming really loud. I actually got paid minimum wage. There were two mazes, and it was in a mall in Sunnyvale that was like half empty. So I'm sure it was just really cheap. They took over like 3 stores and they built like 2 mazes. One was clowns. So that's the 3D part. That's the 3D House of Terror part. It was like a bunch of clowns with weird makeup that glows in the dark with black lights, and you put on the glasses and everything. But we were in this place called Planet Horrorwood, which is supposed to be, like Planet Hollywood, right? So it was this. So they built this giant maze. Steven, you probably know how this works.
Yep.
Of like shitty plywood, it's like a giant maze that they built and painted all the walls black, and put in the exit doors and the scare doors, which is where people hide and jump out. But so they had like, I don't know, I think there's about 30 actors all together, all basically teenagers with a few adults like scattered in, a few like older adults. Because teenagers love to scare the piss out of people. They love it, especially teenagers. So. They're really good at it. They're very aggressive. They got a lot of testosterone. So they had all these different rooms. There was like the Freddy room and the Friday the 13th room and the Scream room and the Psycho room. So I actually got cast as Leatherface. I was the last room at the very end. And then in my room, it was me and this girl, Natalia, was my victim. She was a teenager as well. She was really annoying, but she made a great victim because she was super annoying. So she'd be on the other side of the room, like in chains with her shirt ripped up and be like, help, help, help. But she was my victim. And I was on the other side hiding behind this like scare door or whatever. And so what she would do is distract the customers as they came through. And then when she was busy screaming and moaning, I'd jump out with my fake chainsaw and like scream at them and go back into my little hidey space behind the walls. But there was one other, well, I don't know if you call him a person, but there was this animatronic in my room called Twitchy. He was like an upside down corpse, like half a body, just the jeans and the legs hanging upside down. And he had like these fake guts hanging out of his waist, I guess, right? So there was a motion detector in the room, and people would walk by and Twitchy would twitch, right? And it was supposed to scare them and shock them, whatever. But the problem was that Twitchy, his legs were like metal. It was like a metal frame inside the legs, inside the jeans, right? So, and sometimes he was like strung up on a 2x4 above our little room. Pretty early on in the run, I was like, man, what if I one day were to like, what if someone sets off the motion detector and because I would like jump out of my room when Twitchy was really close to me. I was like, what if I jump out of my little hidey space? Somebody walks past the motion detector and Twitchy twitches because he twitches very violently. I was like, what if I get hit by Twitchy? And I was always like slightly worried. So also in my little hidey space, there was a Psycho room, from the movie Psycho. There was like a little bait. It was earlier in the maze, but me and the guy that played Norman Bates shared this little hidey space. So they had like his room was like the front desk of the Bates Motel, and then a shower. So what would happen is people would go through the Bates Motel, and then there was like a shower curtain. In the shower, when they opened the shower, there was like this really creepy mannequin. And then when they're busy looking at the mannequin, Norman Bates, or should I say, Norman Bates dressed up as his mother. He was dressed up in like a nightgown and a wig. He would jump out and scare them. So he and I like were in this very small space together, like very dark space for like, I don't know, 5 hours a night. He would jump out his door and I would jump out my door. And he was perfectly cast. He was really good at scaring people. And I remember multiple times he would scare groups of people so bad that they would fall into the walls and break them down. They would like collapse.
Oh my God.
And our hiding space would like collapse. So basically like they jumped out of one little door built into the wall and screamed at them and ran back in. So it does get pretty repetitive after a while. You're just like going back and forth and back and forth. But then after a while, when my voice got trashed, I sort of like, well, I have to adjust and be efficient because not everyone responds the same to being scared. So after a while, I realized like some people just want to be cool and they're not going to get scared at all. They would just sit there and look at you like they're totally bored. And you're like, why did you pay $20? It was like $20 back in like 2005 maybe to go through this. So I don't know. I was always like, why are you paying $20 just to be bored, right? But then some people would like laugh. Some people get scared and then laugh at themselves. Some people would get pissed off, and a couple people would take swings at people.
Wow.
Never happened to me. I had people cock back a couple of times.
Yeah.
But people had been hit in earlier years. But then, of course, my favorite is the teenage girls because they would go completely insane, absolutely bonkers. But yeah, after all, I realized like I could tell as soon as I jumped out of my little hidey door if they were worth scaring. So if they weren't worth scaring, I'd just go back in my room. I wouldn't. I would just like raise my fake chainsaw and just go back into my room because I'm not going to waste my voice on people that don't care. But obviously, if it was a good group, like a bunch of teenage girls, I'd be like, I don't care if my voice is trashed. I know I'm going to, I don't really care. I am going to enjoy myself, right? So anyways, as we got towards the end, I was getting a little bit afraid of Twitchy. And one night I jumped out and what I was kind of worried about happened, which is somebody tripped the motion detector as I jumped out and Twitchy twitched.
Yeah.
And it hit me right here. Luckily, I didn't lose my eye. It popped me right above the eye. And I ran back into my little hiding space. I was like, my first response was like, I feel so stupid. I can't believe that happened to me. And then I was like, wow, this is really painful. It feels like getting hit with a baseball bat. And then I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I was like, I guess I was stunned probably. So I went back out a couple times to scare people. But then I was like, all of a sudden I was like, is that sweat or blood? Like under my mask. I was like, wow, something's dripping down my face. So I was like, you know what? And I like reached under my mask. I looked at my hand. I'm like, that, even in the dark, I was like, that doesn't look like sweat. So because I was at the last room, I exited the maze and there was actually in the mall. So people were waiting in line to get into the front of the maze. So here I come in my costume with, by the way, fake blood on my apron because that's what Leatherface has. I walk out, I pull off my mask, and there's like blood streaming down the side of my face. So all these people in line are like, "What's that dude? Look at that dude! What's going on with that dude, man?" So they had to call the security guards, and they were just like, "Oh no, it looks bad." And so finally they were like, "Yeah, you got to go to emergency room. This is not a good thing." So Natalia, my victim, volunteered to drive me into the emergency room. So she drove me in when she got lost. It took us about an hour to get to the emergency room. The entire time she was telling me stories about how she'd been injured playing field hockey. I guess that was her big thing. So we finally got to the emergency room and they were really excited. They were so happy. They were like, come by. Like everybody in the whole emergency room, they were like, come in here. You got to see this guy. Oh my God. So they actually put like 10 stitches like right above my, luckily I didn't get hit right on the eye.
Right.
Not be a funny story.
Stitches though.
Right. So 10 stitches, and then so they sewed me up. It wasn't too bad, but like a black, not a terrible black eye, but like my eyelid turned like purple.
Oh.
I have a picture of it. It's pretty gruesome. But anyway, so like I think we got released at like 2 a.m. from the hospital, and so I was like, "Hey, Natalia, let me take you out. The only thing that's open is Denny's. Let me take you to Denny's." So we went to Denny's, and I realized as we're sitting across from each other, I was like, "Oh, my eye is really gross." So I like hid my eye from her, and she was like, "Why are you doing that?" I was like, "Oh, I don't want to gross you out while you're eating your moons over my hammy." And she was like, "I've seen a lot worse, way worse." But anyway, so I did take off. I think I took off a couple shows, or if I guess you call them shows, right?
Yeah.
And then when I came back, like nobody was impressed. They're like, well, my stitches got taken out and my eye kind of unswelled or got less purple, whatever. So nobody was really impressed at all. I was very disappointed. You thought I would get a lot of respect for having an injury like that, but they're just like, I've seen worse, right?
Yeah, I've seen worse.
And then when we got to the end, it was like, we got to the end, it was like an endurance contest. I mean, people were getting bored and they were like quitting, and they would just sit around. They used to talk about how all the good scares, after the show, they'd be like, I scared these kids so bad they peed their pants. But now it's like, my ankle hurts, my leg hurts, my elbow hurts. And then people started to quit. My eye did recover. You can't really see my stitches because they're actually right below my eyebrow. And
I've never even noticed it.
And luckily, like I said, I do sometimes think like, wow, I'm really lucky that that wasn't like 2 inches lower. I would have put my eye out. But anyway, so that's my story, Stephen, and my experience in the haunted house.
But for it.
My days of being a scare actor are over. And Stephen, your days of traumatizing elementary school children are over.
They are for now.
For now.
We don't know what the future brings.
You're right. There is a chance that the family, I like the idea that it's like a family affair. Like this is, the family that traumatizes small children together stays together. I like that the whole family pitches in. Oh yeah. Building it, coming up with the concepts, acting in it, and scaring the crap out of people. Well, I think that's a wrap, as they say here. 2 fantastic, bone-chilling stories of haunted houses and traumatizing children and getting attacked by animatronic dummies. Mm-hmm. I couldn't have asked for more. So thanks, Stephen, for being a part of the podcast, and thanks, Janine, for doing the tech stuff. And I want to thank my friend Jillian for coming up with the name, Short Fuse for Fear, which is a great name. And well, maybe we'll do this more than once a year. It's possible. You never know. Hope everyone has a happy Halloween and a fun Halloween. And that's the end.